Paul, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on kind of who you are, where you come from, and the rest of it?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for the introduction, saying that I'm accomplished. That's very kind of you. So yeah, my background, I've been in the talent space for around 15 years now. Started recruitment agency side, and that's probably just under half my career, working with telecoms, enterprise software companies, before making the switch in-house some years ago with Toa Technologies, who were ultimately bought by Oracle. And then Sprinkler, and then the business of fashion. So really a theme of technology kind of running through and digital media as well. So everything from being the first person in a region as a single recruiter in EMEA through to running talent teams across the globe, where we've done things like roll out success profiles and career planning and pathways, etc. So worked across the globe in numerous different industries, and it's been a hell of a journey.
The reason why I ask you is because it's obviously highly relevant to the subject of the discussion today, which is candidate experience. I dug out some stats that were, I think, collated pre-COVID-19 about market experience of candidacy. And there was a report on Beamery about candidate experience and the importance of it, which I thought we could use some statistics from to kind of headline some of our discussion. The first statistic that kind of pulled out of the document is that 60% of candidates and applicants go through a bad experience when they're applying to a job.
Despite candidate experience being so high in terms of both importance and urgency for talent and HR leaders and CEOs as well, to that point, it's high on the agenda. Yet I don't think it's necessarily given all the tools that are required to get it there. Mm-hmm. I think in some cases you have understaffed talent teams, perhaps trying to run with too many recs at one time, or quite simply, it's just not a KPI or something they're being measured on, which truly baffles me. I think if you look at any customer success management team, they're purely measured, not purely measured. One of the measurements they would have would be on customer satisfaction and NPS score, as well as obviously retention of revenue. And although companies should be doing a lot better now to set themselves apart, honestly, I think it's taking a hit even more now.
Sure. I mean, that kind of leads me on to the next question. Like, where do you think that candidate experience statistic would probably sit, given the kind of the current state of the market, and particularly from a talent acquisition perspective and a people operations jobs perspective, with very limited supply of roles and a significant amount of demand? Do you think, I kind of know the answer to this, right? But, do you think these statistics would have increased or decreased in the current situation?
Yeah, I mean, definitely increased. You look at, just a quick LinkedIn search will show you that roles that might perhaps attract 30, 40 applicants across a week are now attracting 200, because there's so many great people that have unfortunately been let go, or whatever their personal circumstances, and are available for work and are applying to lots of different roles, because it's...
What in your experience and as for kind of field of vision has been really effective in terms of as for kind of positioning a really positive candidate experience?
Yeah, good question. And for me, it's all about communication. I think people are going to understand if things are going to take a little bit longer. People are going to understand that normally you might be in with a shot with a particular interview because your experience is closely aligned to what the company is looking for, but actually in this situation that company might have an influx of 30 people who are much more closely aligned, and you can understand that that's why the company would prefer to move ahead with them. But despite that knowledge, the communication isn't coming out anywhere near as much as it should. There's loads of ways you can do it. Most companies have an ATS now to manage all their applicants. So you can set up automated emails that can ping out, quite regularly, just to keep people updated. You could even give people the opportunity to self-select in or out. So Perhaps on a very basic level, do you have the right to work in country X, yes or no? And if it's a no, you can automate it to say, well, we're very sorry, but in this current situation, we're unable to move forward. So just increasing the amount of communication and simply through things like ATS, and then obviously once you're in process, making sure that your communication levels remain high, so that people know what's going on. And if things are going to take 3 weeks to get through the interview process, so be it. That's absolutely fine. I think people accept that. Just tell us.
Yeah. One of the other stats that came out of that BME report was that 72% of that 60% of candidates were likely to share their negative experience with other job seekers, colleagues, friends, family, etc., etc. Do you have kind of an understanding of how candidate experience has been kind of negatively impacted by, I suppose, kind of like that association with, all kind of feed through from one candidate to another? Have you had any kind of specific experience of that? How can that be managed better?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to say that in my experience, none of my teams have ever given anybody a bad candidate experience. Therefore, never had that experience. But I imagine that's not completely true. There's always more and better work you can do. But everybody knows about things like Glassdoor and other sites like that, where people are going to put reviews when it's particularly negative. In Glassdoor, I always take with a pinch of salt. For me, the outstanding glowing reviews are always being asked of people once they've got the job or once they've been in their induction week. Hey, can you write us a review? And then the negative ones are the ones that are perhaps few and far between, but they're much more likely to be quite vocal about it. And understandably so.
Yeah.
You're going to be angry if you're going to be taking a time out to write that message. But you have to remember that other people do look at that and perhaps don't take it with the same pinch of salt. So they're going to see that your candidate experience, your interview process is poor. And then obviously you can talk a much bigger picture about the company culture and what it's like there when you look at employee reviews. But the interview reviews are there for anybody to see. And it does deter people from applying.
There's nothing more frustrating as a recruiter, and like I suppose at this point it's probably a good time to kind of hold my hands up and say, sometimes I haven't been the best in terms of delivering superb candidate experience, but I think any recruiter who understands how busy things can get would appreciate that that there are challenges around that, whether you're a 1 or 2 person business or whether you're a 2,000, 3,000, 20,000 person business. Like, we all have to get better at this, and I think a realization around that is definitely kind of occurring at the moment given the circumstances. But I think what I was saying is kind of one of the most frustrating experiences as a recruiter is that when you reach out to a candidate, whether it's usually on kind of a headhunt or kind of referred basis, and you position an opportunity with a business, certainly from my perspective as a third party recruiter, and that person says, oh no, I won't want to interview at that business because my friend worked there or interviewed there and came away with a bit of a whiff of something not quite right about the candidate journey and about the way that they treat employees, etc., etc. Obviously, with candidate experience and employee engagement, being very much kind of hand in hand partners in positivity, really. It's so annoying. So having that really positive candidate experience, process and structure in place is really, really key. Because an applicant, in my view, is a candidate. They don't have to be in the process to necessarily qualify as a candidate. When somebody has shown an interest in joining your company, they should be left, if rejected, from the opportunity with a warm and fluffy feeling about it, and still think, I suppose kind of like a bit of sweetness that, maybe not this time, but, that was actually all right. They were transparent with me. They were honest with me. They told me all the right things, and they were constructive in terms of their feedback. I get, when you have 800 applicants, you can't go back to every single one of them and say, you weren't right for this, you weren't right for that. And that's why toolkitting with things like, I suppose, kind of like automatic deselectors on like a forms basis is definitely a useful tool. But you've got to, as an employee, you have to protect your brand by putting in place the robust and kind of adaptable processes to make sure that people showing an interest in the business are going to have a good time with it. Yeah. And then, how do you go about making the candidate experience as engaging and almost kind of productified as, you know, simply going to the shop and buying something from a brand that you recognise and you want to purchase a product from?
Yeah, I mean, it's about having as many touch points as you possibly can. You know, similar to when you do buy a product, you know, you're not necessarily just going to go straight into any old shop, pick up the first thing you see and buy it. There would have been some sort of brand awareness that's been built up in your subconscious through, it could be, you know, basic advertising on TV, radio, whatever, or social, of course. And it's the same with the candidate experience, and as you say, consumerify, you know, that experience. So brand awareness, so putting out your employer brand and your employee value proposition, you know, putting it up on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and work kind of hand in glove with the marketing team to ensure that it has parity, both in terms of the experience once you get to it as well, of course, but also what you're trying to push out as to who you are as a company, and also what it's like to work there, so that you're starting to reach out to people and have them engaged and interested in your brand, have you as a potential employer of choice before they've even clicked on any job role that you might have. You know, it's a long process to get from I know this company through to I'm actually going to apply.
If you disassociate your employer brand and candidate experience from the front end product that you represent, then that disconnect is going to have a significant impact. I think one of the big challenges for startups, for example, at the moment is that it's all, you know, genius-led stuff, you know, groundbreaking technology, etc., and it can become quite introverted and insular in terms of its self-awareness and its kind of intrinsic ego. So a lot of the time, I think with startups in particular, building candidate experience and employer brand as well as a part of that, they tend not to focus on, you know, how that would potentially affect their growth moving forward. It's more like, yeah, we're great and we're doing fantastic things, so you should really want to work for us because, you know, we're going to change the shape of the future kind of thing, rather than this is great and we're going to make it great by being great at everything within it.
I mean, as that startup, as that scale up, you just don't have the employer brand that the big organizations do. Your employee value proposition may be better, but you know, not many people know it because you are a smaller company, that marketing hasn't been done, that there aren't as many people that know about you as a company as know about Facebook with its billions of users, right? So in those instances, anybody that's applying for a role with you or has been reached out to proactively on your company's behalf, you know, they're going to do their research on you as an organization. So that's where your brand awareness journey starts. So it's a little bit later on in the process, but there is still that brand awareness. People are going to do their research and make a conscious decision as to, yes, I would be interested in there, or absolutely, that's not the right place for me. So if they've gone with the, yes, I've made an application, chances are they've done their research. They are interested in you in a company. They are interested in you in a brand, both as an employer brand and as a consumer brand, if you are one of those, but you know, just wider brand. And if you don't back it up with a great candidate experience, you've lost that person.
Or do you have kind of any awareness of like key measurables around as for kind of candidate satisfaction and experience?
Yeah, and they're surprisingly easy to do. And we've really spoken about how communication is key, but you really just want to keep a pulse survey on what that's like. And I would have that given as a key performance indicator to anybody that's in a recruitment team or a talent team. You know, what is your candidate satisfaction score? And you can inbuild little pulse surveys into your email signature, for example. So every single time you're sending an email to somebody in the process, whether they be a prospect or a final stage interview candidate, you can give them a simple, how's the interview process for you? amazing, okay, or awful. And then you end up with essentially an NPS score. And you can start to get an idea as a talent leader from your team who's giving the best candidate experience. Okay, so now I want to know why, so I can dig into that information. But also, I think it's of paramount importance that you don't just keep that data within the talent function. That has to be scaled to your senior business leaders, because they're involved in the process as well. Right? They need to know how your candidate experience is affecting your brand experience, how when you have some hiring managers that are well known for cancelling interviews last minute all the time, how that's affecting the candidate experience. So because it's very much a partnership, I think in many cases the talent and recruitment functions are seen as a kind of separate standalone shared services service provider. But actually, if you wrap it into the company as a strategic partner, you get much better value, and therefore those metrics should be reported in both ways.
One of the big things about people getting into talent acquisition is actually being able to impact on the wider talent project, and build the processes, contribute and feedback around what company's doing right, what company's doing wrong, and use a level of creativity and self-expression to impact positively on what the company does. When you work in an in-house recruitment function, you pull on the shirt of that company, and you've got to kind of kiss the badge and kind of front the air with your fist about them kind of thing. Whereas when you're on a third-party recruitment agency, it's actually very difficult to do that. I think candidate experience, while it does start on a more general basis from an awareness of the brand and what they do and how cool what everything that they do is, I think the real, I suppose, kind of the biting point is how you are engaged with by the recruitment and talent team. And if you're not engaged in a way that's passionate, then and sort of kind of strongly advocating that what it's like to work here and why you should come and work here, then there's a big problem. And that advocacy and that positivity around employer brand, employee engagement and career development pathways, that all informs the candidate experience.
If you've got a great in-house talent person, it is very much a partnership. Yes, there's going to be processes, but I'm putting that in for when we're at scale.
Yeah.
So it'll be light touch, but it helps everybody work from one place. So then it allows you to control your candidate experience a lot more as well.
Yeah, completely.
If everybody knows what they're working to.
Yeah, I think employer brand. Obviously, kind of dipping our toe into this a little bit via candidate experience. Candidate experience is a part of employer brand, and candidate experience, employer brand, EVP. They're all very, very closely kind of partnered as we're kind of bedfellows, really. Like different circumstances dictate different things, right? If you've got a very early stage startup, you can't really build much of an employer brand because you don't really have an employer brand. But you can, even in those very early stages, you have a value proposition which aligns with the values of the business and what the product's about. But actually, even if you're a 10-person startup, you can start to build a positive candidate experience, or start to build the embryo of it. This is what we want it to look like, and that really has to stem from the founders and the people who are kind of driving the overriding vision. When you're more established as a business and you've got a precedent and a past history of hiring people successfully and onboarding them and then being effective in their roles, that's when you can start to build what we're about and how we can platform careers, etc., and that can feed through into the brand and that can feed back into the candidate experience. But looking at the kind of candidate experience on an isolated basis, I think it's really, really clear to establish that point that we have already, that the key thing to it and the key thing about positive candidate experience is communication, and where everybody really needs to get better across recruitment, whether it's agency side or talent acquisition, is that it's about keeping people posted. There's an interesting point in the Beamery article about while as a recruiter, if you don't have any news about an opportunity that you've put someone forward for internally or externally, no news is still news to the candidates that you're representing. It's very, very easy to fall into the trap of you know, being, well, there's nothing to update you on, so I'm not going to update you. Just kind of being a bit more clinical about disengaging a candidate from an opportunity, you can then be cleaner about re-engaging them if somebody does come back and say, actually, yeah, I've re-reviewed the CV and it looks like a great profile. Let's see them. The communication point is absolutely critical. I think in terms of, as we kind of head of this meeting, we discussed a couple of as kind of key points really to look at, and one of them was about the challenges of building and maintaining a positive candidate experience. Like, what are, I'm sure we've covered them, but if you were to kind of like bullet point concisely what the key challenges are around building a candidate experience, what would you say they would be?
I mean, I've been in the in-house. I've been in-house for the best part of a decade now, I think. And what amazes me is I look back to that time when candidate experience was important and urgent, and it hasn't changed, and we're still where it's important and urgent, but people still aren't doing it well enough.
Yeah.
When it's the most simple thing to get right.
Mm-hmm.
Communication and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've worked with, let's say, I've been very fortunate. I've worked for some wonderful managers, and I've had wonderful people in my team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very picky about who's in my team, so I think they're all superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I'd like to think we've always given a great candidate experience, and whenever we've measured it and asked for that feedback, the experience has been good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not to say we haven't let 1, 2, 3, or maybe even 100 slip through the gaps and have a poor experience. But as long as we're moving the needle in the right way, then I'm happy. It's all well and good measuring your talent and recruitment team on things like time to hire. Mm-hmm. But you've got to remember that interviewers, availability, hiring managers, sort of, commitment to the process is all going to play into that time to hire. Mm-hmm. So I'd hold them to account in the same way. Mm-hmm. So, as an example, in the past, we've had a VP of a particular region who just was not engaging particularly well with the recruitment team. Cancelled calls last minute. Didn't really sort of engage with the sort of CV review process or anything like that. So in the end, took the recruiter off him, gave it to a VP of another region. And because both of those VPs were being measured not just on revenue, but how quickly they were growing their teams as well, mm-hmm. Suddenly the one that wasn't engaged was getting a knock on the door from his management saying, "Why haven't you grown your team? Why is your time to hire so poor?" Mm-hmm. So funnily enough, they come back. So if you're not going to use them and work in partnership with them, we're going to give them to somebody who does want them. If you're the hiring manager, if you're the recruiter, if you're the CEO, put yourself in that candidate's position. How would you feel if you? And I've seen this happen before as well, where you've been told, "Yeah, you passed the first interview. We'd love to see you for a second interview," and you start getting it scheduled, only for the hiring manager to then change their mind a day before the interview is due to happen. Say, "Actually, you can cancel that." Now thinking about it, I don't get a good vibe. Right? Imagine being on the receiving end of it, and how you would feel about that individual, about how you feel about that company. Are you going to tell people? Of course you are. These ripple effects really do kind of have a massive impact. But whatever you implement, make sure you're focused on communication and empathy, and from there you'll start to get a good candidate experience because it underlines all of it.
It does. I think it's like it's the internal communication piece that informs the external communication piece. And if your stakeholders on board in the talent process, invested in the talent process, then that can have a very dangerous impact on the candidate experience that you as a recruiter are trying to deliver. And therefore, as a company, you're trying to, kind of platform, right? That's the biggest thing. So if you have everyone pulling in the right direction, and aware of the pitfalls of a poor candidate experience and why things are processed in a certain way, which is all, like we said, kind of like linked in this massive complex web of experience, engagement, employer brand, operational fluidity, etc., then you've got a big problem. And that is really, I think, the key challenge in candidate experience is down to something as simple as communication.
It is. You can measure as much time to hire and other metrics as you like, but if you haven't got communication down, then they're all affected.
Of course, yeah. Of course, yeah. Nice and simple candidate experience. In order to platform improvement around it, what sort of toolkits have you used?
Well, you start with your ATS, because that's going to give you all the information you need to know about process. That's going to give you your raw numbers. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with Greenhouse, I've worked with JobVite and others. All have their strengths, all have their weaknesses in terms of how powerful reporting is, and whether you need additional sort of BI software to start manipulating some of the numbers. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you start from there and measure everything. Mm-hmm. I think I have a list of around 35 different metrics that I measure. Mm-hmm. And all form part of either performance monitoring or really just how do we improve? Mm-hmm. You know, what can we do better, and why is this happening? Mm-hmm. So if you measure absolutely everything, we've already mentioned time to hire, we've already mentioned cost per hire. I then want to look into things like quality of hire, you know, it's kind of long-term, who's being successful, why are they being successful? Mm. Then you can kind of come back from that to decide, right, they've come from this angle, so these people are more successful. If there's a correlation, so we're going to go find more of those people, you know, all kind of intrinsically links. You know, I'm very data minded, so I love sort of playing with the numbers and trying to figure out where those correlations are and whatnot. So yeah, starting with ATS, and then if you've got Power BI or ClickView or anything like that, then that's really useful. But if you don't, then you can simply manipulate the numbers with Excel, and that will give you what you need to know, or at least give you the follow-up questions to ask. Another beauty of data is you can break everything down by region, by hiring manager, by recruiter. You know, why is candidate experience outstanding here but awful there? Is it something that's going on with this process that we don't know about yet? Is it the way the recruiter talks to them? I don't know, you know, but it at least puts you in a position where you're asking the right questions to improve it.
One of the things that I wanted to do as a kind of a bit of a relief from the kind of stolid recruitment and talent acquisition chat at the end of these videos was to ask a question akin to the Desert Island Discs, you know, cast away on an island with a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare, the Bible, and you know, whatever else that they say in that circumstance. And ask you as for kind of recruitment related scenario based question like that, which is that if you were in a as we're kind of stranded in an office working for a company with a significant hiring plan, they've just given you a desk and a computer, what are the 3 tools that you would want to kind of have with you as the absolute essentials?
Yeah, good question. Funny enough, somebody asked me this the other day. I couldn't even remember my answer then, but because it does change a little bit based on, you know, what's the size of the organisation, what's the volume, what are your goals, etc., etc. So it all kind of feeds into it. But I think even if you're a startup and you're going to be doing some growth, I would definitely first invest in an ATS.
Yeah.
You know, there are companies that somehow still do their recruiting through Excel and use that just to track their candidates, and it's just impossible to deliver quality experience to that, right? It's not going to give you nudges to follow up or anything like that.
Guilty.
And you can't automate anything. Yeah, you are. Okay. So it means that you've just got to be so much more, you've got to be so much better at it yourself intrinsically.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right? And ATS takes that requirement to be great at something away, you know, if you're not overly communicative, because it's just going to keep nudging you. You've got to talk to this person, you've got to talk to this person, but also just to manage everybody through the process and make sure that everybody has access to all the information they need. So I'd definitely start with a quality ATS, and there are many depending on your size of organisation and your needs.
Yeah.
You know, next being, you say I've got a computer, I'm going to hope Excel is on there, because then I can use that to manipulate data. So
Yeah.
I want that as well.
Good answer.
Then next, it's not so much just a tool, but it would be a partnership, a strong partnership with marketing, to really understand how we can get our brand out there from a recruitment perspective.
Yeah.
So then there are tools out there like optimization tools, social media management tools, anything where you can like talk from front office externally. You want to make sure you've got one voice, and ensure that you're all reaching people in the same way. The touch points are great. You're engaging with people through social if they're commenting on anything that you're putting up. And there's so many platforms. I'd love something to kind of manage all of that in one place. My final tool.
LinkedIn Recruiter, surely.
LinkedIn Recruiter is very useful. It's not cheap. LinkedIn Recruiter is not cheap, and it's excellent. So therefore, anybody that's from LinkedIn, if you want to give me an 80% discount next time I buy, I'll be very grateful. And if you want to give it to James for free as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, please.
LinkedIn Recruiter is very powerful. I think that there are ways around it if your budget is tight. If you've got a strong sourcer who can Google X-ray search and hunt through things like GitHub as well by utilizing the right Boolean strings, etc., you're going to find people. You're going to find ways around it. But LinkedIn Recruiter is easy, simple. Some would use it as a very basic form of ATS as well. I'd like to think it will get better. Now Microsoft have invested in it, that the ATS side of it will get better. They are constantly tweaking it. Some tweaks work really well, some tweaks work less well. But they are working hard on it. So in terms of reach, though, just easy access to a huge amount of the market. It's incredible. I'm going to show my age and say I was one of the first 1 million people on LinkedIn way back when, before LinkedIn Recruiter even existed. So I was back in the days of having to crawl through head offices to map out companies. Now it's all there for you.
Text only updates, no pictures, no GIFs, no videos. Great. Those are the days. It was like a classified section, basically, with the LinkedIn feed.
It was, yeah. I spent way more time on the phone going through receptionists at head office trying to figure out who the VP of Professional Services was. I didn't have a clue, but it was just a very different way of doing it back then.
It certainly was. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that kind of covers it. Thanks for your candid answers around those questions and kind of comments around the challenges that we face, and suffering. So kind of taking my kind of video wings, if you like. I don't know. I'm not sure whether that will make the edit, but who knows? But look,